I think he's an extraordinary person because he really does wish authentically to serve the community, to serve people, to serve life, to enrich.
Jon Busch is, a bedrock of the community in such a quiet way.
Jon is a kind of everyman who is kind of dedicated to public service.
He shared his passions with people, and it was infectious. And the spirit was always where it should be, about helping the community and the town, and not about Jon.
Jon grew up in Portland, Oregon. Coming from a musical family, he played the bassoon. As first bassoon in the Portland Junior Symphony, Jon received a scholarship to attend the Aspen Music School in 1964. The last year, the music festival used the original music tent, and from 1966 to 1968 was second bassoon in the festival orchestra. Jon took a position with the Indianapolis Symphony. However, having aesthetic differences over hair length, the symphony let him go in 1969, and he moved permanently to Aspen. One of Jon's first jobs in Aspen was working for the Hi-Fi Shop, the owner of which had been hired by a group of investors to put the FM radio station KSPN on the air.
I was hired as a carpenter to build the KSPN studio in the basement of the Hotel Jerome. And I wasn't a carpenter, but anyway, I passed myself off as one, as a lot of people did in the 70s. I was sleeping in a crawl space above the drop ceiling. I ended up being the station manager.
Jon is known around Aspen as the movie man. His interest in movies began in high school.
I changed the signboard at the local theater, and I learned to be a projectionist. It seems to have been my destiny.
In 1972, Bill Pence, who went on to found the Telluride Film Festival, leased the Wheeler Opera House Theater and offered Jon a position managing their film program.
He allowed me a lot of flexibility in programming the films, and it actually got to the point where I was doing the write-ups and the calendars, and it was, in many respects, it was just my operation.
Except for a brief hiatus, Jon programmed film at the Wheeler until 2009.
I think my greatest pride is bringing in films that otherwise would not have played in Aspen.
The guy that was taking the tickets, you'd go into the theater and suddenly he would appear on stage, this quaint fellow, and give an amazing review of the film that was going to be shown and a preview of what was upcoming. I mean, I saw films like The Bicycle Thief and Agir, The Wrath of God, and Last Tango in Paris, all because of Jon Busch, because he had this incredible program.
I always tell people who ask, the secret to successful art film programming is having the right balance between films people want to see and films people should want to see.
When we make film and so on available to our community, we're allowing a broader spectrum of understanding. And so that's what I think Jon's endeavor was. And so I spent a lot of time, picking films and then technically making certain that they were in the very best composition possible so that the audience could appreciate the films versus having to worry about anything other than the content and the emotional sort of value that films would bring.
It was always a matter of putting on a good show.
In 1974, he became one of the founders of Aspen Gay Ski Week, the first event of its kind in the United States, and to this day, the only one that is nonprofit.
In the early 70s, 2 gay ski clubs started coming to Aspen, and the art museum let us use their gallery space for a party, and I'm sure they were having heart attacks with all of the people that were there.
All of the proceeds go to LGBTQ causes locally, statewide, and nationwide. So all the money that we make during Gay Ski Week, we give away.
It's a hallmark for Aspen, in my view, because it It shows what I think, what a brilliant, liberal, broad-minded community Aspen is. And it's things like that, that kind of sense of tolerance and acceptance. That's what it gave to Aspen and enlarged that in a wonderful way.
Aspen was very welcoming to the gay experience, and in fact, I was responsible for passing the gay rights ordinance in Aspen.
People might not remember those days, but at that time, if two guys were seen holding hands or dancing together, or whether it was either holding each other and dancing or not, that was forbidden.
This ordinance was the first gay rights ordinance in the state and became the model adopted by communities throughout the region. In 1974, Jon proposed that the conservative local newspaper, Aspen Today, should have a liberal voice, which started Jon on a literary course.
I went to them and I said, you need to have a liberal voice in your conservative paper. And so they took me on. And then I went over to the Times. And I was at the Times for many years. And then I ended up at the Aspen Daily News. So, I mean, I was a columnist for probably 25 years.
Jon had his hand in many smaller local endeavors. Aspen was given a stockpile of antique streetlights that sat at the water plant for years. Jon persuaded the city to install them on Main Street. When they ran out, Jon found a source of reproductions of a similar design in Portland, Oregon. He even picked the blue spruce color for the lights. It helped that Jon was on the Commercial Corps and Lodging Commission, a position he held for 18 years. Not all of Jon's endeavors were successful. In 2002, he and a group of local visionaries purchased 6 antique American streetcars, circa 1900, from Lisbon, Portugal, with the goal of operating a Galena Street crosstown shuttle.
He was always very enthusiastic about Aspen issues, and he saw opportunities, I think many times, before most people did. He was ahead of the times clearly on the notion of electrified vehicles serving downtown. We eventually got permission to get it on a ballot to see if the city would allow us to go forward and use the public streets. And we had our election. We lost just barely. It was just, I think it was less than 100 votes. I think it was like 68 votes we lost the election by. And so that dream came and went.
He was instrumental in securing what is the largest pipe organ on the western slope for the community church.
I've always had a passion for pipe organs, and it dates from my high school days and the old movie palaces.
He located a historic organ for St. Mary's and a digital organ for the Aspen Music Festival and School, a nonprofit he has supported for many years.
When you hear the sound of a pipe organ on stage in Harris Hall, you should thank Jon Busch. He has cared so much about this. He's given us so much expertise and also generosity.
I don't recall why Jon and I started talking about this, but at some point I asked him if he had a will and if somebody knew what his wishes were when he wasn't here anymore. And he said, oh yeah, I have a will, and I'm leaving everything to the Aspen Music Festival and School. I said, you are? I said, do they know about that? He said, no. I said, would you mind if they did know? He said, oh, okay. But the other reason I love this story is that Jon came here as a music student, and it was through the music school that he got introduced to Aspen, and then he chose to stay here. And when Jon is no longer in Aspen, that his gift is going to go right back to support what brought him here and what he has loved so deeply and been so involved with all these decades.
Jon currently runs a specialty film program for the Pitkin County Library. 2019 marks Jon's 50th anniversary as a resident of Aspen.
Not everybody moves here and makes a life here, and that's something Jon has really done, and he's given so much to the community. Everything about Jon is about the spirit of Aspen.
He never looked for personal aggrandizement in the process. He was doing it as a community service. He didn't care if his name was on it or not, and if he got the credit or not.
That's one of the qualities that Jon has, that is, I think, so endearing and enduring.
I would call Jon a true philanthropist because he believes in causes and he gets behind them in ways that other people have not.
For me, Aspen has always been an amazing place because it is a small town with the amenities of a big city, particularly the arts. I've made my stand.